for losers, right? If you want to win a market, you need to kind of jump and swim headfirst into a blue ocean. That's a great idea in principle. For many students, especially many of the people in the room, and myself, I'm quite young, obviously. The idea that you could jump into, you talk to a lot of students, and a lot of the products that people want to solve are the problems that students have, right? Because that's their market, that's what they know. And this idea of jumping into a blue ocean, as a young kind of entrepreneur, it's really difficult, right? Because you don't have that vertical expertise. You don't know, you're at the CTO at IBM. You don't know these specific problems. Right? So, while it's a nice thing to say that yes, you need to be aggressively differentiated. You need to not be fighting while you're finding PMF. There is actually a way in which you can swim over to the blue ocean, but by starting with competition. I'll keep it rolling. And so while the slides come up, I want to just kind of highlight where we're coming from. So new form at a high level. We're a young company. We really started a year ago. We started consulting independently 2 years ago, right? There's a sexy slide. Right, pull it back. Okay, I spent a lot of time on that. Anyway, move forward. Okay, sorry.
Forward.
Makes sense. Big one. So new form started really operating a year ago. We've acquired 40 clients. We do all of pay media for Perplexity, Binance, Blue Chew, Western Union. There's a bunch of other logos that are cool and great clients and partners. And we normally don't share revenue metrics and stuff, but I wanted to highlight for the students here, we grew really fast and we commercialized quite quickly. A lot of that services revenue, and I'll get to that later, but it's really interesting that you can actually get into market, get revenue faster than ever. The next one. So we'll take a step back and understand what was the intention of venture capital and where did it come from, right? It was never this, we seemingly lost the plot a long time ago, right? We talk about low interest rates and the observant things, but the point for this talk is that venture capital really it came from the word adventure capital. Talk about the traitorous ape and Fairchild Semiconductors, right? They left the Shockley laboratory and they started Fairchild, and they were capitalized and it was a big kind of adventurous bet, right? Building semiconductors, right? It wasn't commoditized. It was this thing, and the idea was fundamentally, if you could build the technology, you would have product market fit no matter what, right? If SpaceX can, bring payloads into space affordably, they will have product market fit no matter what. And so software is really interesting, right? Because we look at software, it's not very human, and innately, you're not born and understand code. You look at it's very, very interesting, right? Software cosplays as technology and has been really technology in many kind of form and fashion for the last many decades. And so to look through kind of our hot take is that software no longer equals technology, and here's the kind of the pillars, almost like the infinity gauntlet of why software basically has very few moats left today. So looking at compute, it was the birth of modern VC, and it was really the birth of software, right? The ability to make these things that were non-physical, right? The internet, moving forward, this was like the big, I think, one of the big kind of bricks that fell, or pillars that fell when it came to the defensibility of software and the moats that software interestingly had, right? Like the internet turned very isolated machines and isolated distribution and physical, CDs into, or whatever, I'm not that old, right? But, the point being, it allowed for these isolated machines to be interconnected. And you could sell things across the internet, right? So people across the globe, you don't have to fly there, you don't have to go to all seven continents anymore, right? We sell them in New York. And so it basically slashed distribution costs. Then cloud in the 2000s, now you can rent world-class infrastructure basically infinitely and near for free, right? Google Cloud, AWS, Azure, etc. And then you look at how that relates to compute now, especially with with GPUs, and you look at some of the big hyperscalers now that are basically they have compute in a box, compute as a service, right? So like CoreWeave, right? CoreWeave basically rents out space on a server rack for you to rent it at a very expensive H100. And then APIs are really interesting. APIs in the 2010s basically enabled a cottage industry of point solutions, right? So most modern software you think of is a bunch of point solutions. Okta is a point solution, right? Apollo is a point solution. There's so many different types of point solutions, but their biggest product, their biggest, they're a business built around APIs, right? Twilio, all these, there's so many. Insert enterprise SaaS company here, it's basically an API, and that's where they make a ton of their money, or also just like allowed for you to kind of grab a lot of these tools that were like, used to be these very individual point pops. Like who knew you could make a company, like Apollo is a massive company, and it's all about just like email databases, right? And then like how do you enrich that data? Now that goes into Clay, right? And you can use Clay. So basically APIs really, kind of took that down, the interconnectability and grabbing all these individual, very interesting things and pulling them together. And then now we're today with vibe coding. And so I imagine the students in the audience probably know this more than anyone who's not a student here. There's this idea now, you can use Cursor or Riplet or any other thing here where you no longer need the pedigree or you don't have to take, I never took linear algebra, I'm pretty dumb, I studied finance. But I can ship software now. I can write to it, I can yell at it, I'll spend half my day saying no, wrong, redo it, make it look like this, wrong vibe, whatever. And so that's now, right? And so think about a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, the ability to make software with just speaking to an agent, it's really, really interesting. So where does this leave us? This is from a very good friend of mine, Andrew Ria. He was talking about vertical SaaS just a few years ago. But it's very applicable to today. And so, remember, go step back. But basically, you have two options, in my opinion. You can either A, build at the frontier of technology. This is for enterprises. You can either A, build at the frontier of technology and do the really hard thing and always evolve with the new thing. This means doing the linear algebra, hard things, doing your homework, all the things I didn't want to do at all. OpenAI, 11 Labs, Claude, they're pushing the innovation frontier. Or you can do very unsexy things and go to old legacy businesses and pull together all these interesting tools we have available today, deeply understand the market and verticalize, right? So look at Palantir. Palantir is the best example of this. They were deeply capitalized, but they did this when it was very, very, very unpopular back in the early 2000s, where they were entirely service-based. They started entirely as a service provider into the most legacy, boring, unsexy business possible, government, right? And they would embed software engineers into the government, unscalable, aggressively unscalable. And they said, there's so much data, this is such a complicated problem from end to end, right? We're gonna embed our own engineers, right? We're basically gonna become McKinsey, but for data and engineering. Scale is also quite interesting, I'll get to them. Scale is the same thing. They do data labeling as a service. They have like a 250,000 people in Bangladesh and Nigeria, so labeling pictures. And it's also to help enable a lot of LLMs in the government. And they have like Report. Report's probably the best example. Many of you may not know Report. And I'll move to the next slide. But Report was founded in 2023. They were these high school dropouts, or I think college dropouts, friends from high school. And they did what we did, and they said, we're going to start as a recruiting agency, right? We're going to help people find talent in India. That was like the whole thing. And so they just started doing something that was very unscalable. Everyone, like, who here would think it's a great idea to start a recruiting business? Probably nobody, right? Recruiting businesses, you Google recruiting, you're going to get like 40, search ads before you actually get to like real results, right? It's like it's a legacy agency, a ton of competition, horrible business, horrible. What they did, these young guys didn't have any idea what to do when recruiting, right? They just dropped out of college. What the hell did they haven't been recruited. What do they know about recruiting? And they basically went at the center of competition. They embedded to understand the market pain, and then they started building software to help swim into the blue ocean, right? So 2 years, they took a recruiting agency to $2 billion of valuation. Look at Palantir. Originally, they were 70% of the service business, 30% SaaS. Now, if you heard their earnings report, they're over 70% of software, 30% of services, and they're basically the most expensive stock on Wall Street. Wall Street loves them right now because they were able to make that transition and basically like margin expand incredibly. And we talked about, touched on scale, but basically they did sweatshops as a service, right? And now they basically, they're powering all these foundational models, and that's why Scale AI CEO was at the inauguration, right next to Sam Altman and all these other people. So what about us? We didn't know anything about marketing. Started marketing, a TikTok marketing agency, horrible idea, really, really bad idea. That's what everyone told us. We knew nothing about marketing. I was in finance. I thought even consumer businesses were a bad idea, let alone trying to grow them, right? And so my co-founder thankfully had done a bit of growth at a startup, and he was the one that was making the TikToks, and he studied math, and his thought was, well, we could actually, this seems like a pretty interesting space to disrupt. All I know is that I'm making a lot of TikToks, they're spending a lot of money on these TikTok ads, and the companies are making a lot of money, I'm capturing none. We could probably capture some more. I said, okay, the great thing about marketing and marketing agencies, extremely easy entry, right? All we did was we just cold emailed people. We cold emailed, we sent emails to people and said, hey, we'll make TikTok ads for you. We'll do it for free, right? So we cold emailed people, and then we started getting, monthly contracts with horrible terms, instant opt-outs, right? 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, instead of, started getting to 5-figure a month deals. Competition meant there was absolutely no clear leader, and it also meant it could be profitable from day one, right? We started really full-time on the company a year ago, but we started consulting and picking up these contracts 2 years ago, right? We just started learning. The other thing about marketing, a marketing agency had such a negative connotation. All the VCs would say, don't hire a marketing agency, they're a scam, they're gonna take all your money. Horrible connotation, generally speaking, very low NPS, at the top of the top, Omnicom, Publicis, WPP, all these big primes. All they are is just one big M&A shop, right? So there's very, a ton of bureaucracy, and very low agency. And it also meant that, because of this idea, there were very few what we consider sweaty operators, right? There were very few people who were bright, young, fresh out of college, like you guys, who said, you know what, we could apply some very interesting things that we're learning or that we're seeing come from the ground up into this space. Because most people were too busy trying to raise VC on some idea that they had about some problem they could solve for college kids, right? And so what that meant was there's very little competition within our ICP, which was really consumer software founders. Consumer software was seeing that, hey, these growth hacks, these product viral loops that we had over the last 10 years no longer worked, right? If you guys remember the Beer app on your phone, in 2008, right? That went viral. Stuff like that, who cares anymore, right? Getting a product to grow itself now, especially consumers, is very, very difficult. And lastly, the market was massive, and still is. There's $1 trillion spent on ads, okay? There's this massive arbitrage we can find on creators too. We basically would go to high growth startups and we'd say, hey, we're gonna do all these ontology-powered performance creative and throw some buzzwords in there. We didn't know what that meant, but what we also knew is that we could hire TikTok, not influencers, but creators, 3,000 followers, 10,000 followers, whatever. We judge them on the merits of the content they made. We could charge them, we could pay them, above market, but frankly, very little, right? We could, a couple $100, 500, $1,000 a month, whatever. Obviously, our creators, and now how this has changed, our creators get paid very well. They get paid more than me. We're paying our content creators, even to the 6 figures in some cases, because that's how important they became for our business. Lastly, this is a market that will be clearly disrupted by the agentic future. If you think about it, it's agent, right? It's the one thing, it's business services, it's people, and agents can go and fill that gap. It'll be really interesting. And then also, we kind of sat on the wind in our sails where privacy is becoming really important in this space. And so with the lack of data you're getting with the loss of cookies and Apple's iOS ATT, all these other restrictions, we make content very valuable, especially with the delivery platform changing, content becomes super valuable. Social media is now interest media, right? And so you never see, I don't see any engagement or whatever on Facebook. I just see other Land Cruisers. I see a lot of Land Cruisers on Facebook, right? And so what that does is it allows you to make content, and the platforms themselves are able to kind of target themselves. So we made a lot of ads, a lot of ads. I think there was another piece of this, but we make about 2,500 ads a month. We made over about 15,000 ads. All these are human ads, not AI ads. We started really learning what made a great ad. That's my dad, by the way, not me. And so, we started kind of varying different things. We started hey, we have a golf product. It's called 18 Birdies. A lot of old people play golf. Maybe if we had an old creator, i.e. my dad, play golf, it'll make a good ad. It did. And then what we started realizing is we were reaching the classic scale problem that everyone was telling us about that we face, right? Firstly, the client loop, right? A lot of our systems broke. How do we maintain these learnings, especially when we just hire our people? Our clients were demanding more, the market was demanding more, and everyone wanted, very instant reporting, analysis, etc. And we had this idea, well, if ChatGPT exists, why can't we connect ChatGPT to, my App Store Connect data, my Facebook ads data, my TikTok ads data, my MMP data, and all these other types, right? We talked about APIs earlier. Okay, that makes sense. And we didn't want to build a dashboard because, you death by dashboard, right? We wanted something that you could talk to, and I could just ask about my data. Where are my ads doing well? Why are they doing well? How much am I spending on my ads? Where? For what client? And these are seemingly simple questions, but would take a data scientist, a few hours or whatever to do it, assuming they're not on vacation or whatever. And then at the top, the most important part of our business, kind of going forward, and the biggest question we had was look, what we tell clients is we'll make you 15 ads. Or 15 ads, and then the first batch of content, and we'll make you another 15, so 30 ads a month. We're only going to do that around a few concepts. And the idea there, and what we were selling is just kind of going back earlier, we're kind of trumping up this idea of making the unsexy thing sexy, is that we're taking this mathematical approach to ads. So we'll make 5 books, 5 bodies, whatever. And we're going to mix and match them until we hit our magic number of service, what we were contracted to deliver from the service perspective, right? But what we're finding out is that process worked. It's very iterative, and we're starting to see, hey, maybe for a client like Acorns saying, I hate being broke versus I hate not knowing where to invest my money. The platforms are going to target very different ICPs, right? Or two different. Does this one work?
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. Great. The platforms will target very different people, right? And across the states and across the world. So the idea is we knew these things to be true. What if we could take the tools that exist today, connect them together, and tie that back to our ad data and help better serve our clients and also win, right? Which was basically, can we basically find what creative elements in an ad make an ad win? It sounds like a simple idea, but the way it's currently done is you name the file of your ad. It would be woman 1, concept 2, time, whatever. These naming conventions, in these big companies that run tons of ads have these naming conventions on a file that are massive. And then you get a data science team to have to proactively or actively try to think of what they may want to test in the future, right? Tag it, and then look back after the data's been delivered and say, oh wait, well what if we wanted to test this other thing, or we have this other whatever, right? So we thought, well, screw that. What if we could actually just watch the ad after it's been delivered, and then understand, is there some correlation between these elements and any other metric that we care about, right? And so, given with the access to Vision AI, with Google Gemini and things, our platform is actually able to launch our ads, tie that back to ad data, and tell you can ask questions. Does a creator present in the first 3 seconds increase or decrease my cost per install? Does saying this thing increase or decrease my cost per purchase, right? They're very, very key questions to ask, very difficult conventionally. This is a video, I don't know if it'll play. Here's this is, I don't know, 6 months old, but here's a quick demo of our bot. We just ask it, pull up the spend. This is something you'd pay $100,000 for a media buyer to do for you. And it'll basically, it has its own Python environment. It'll tell you, hey, we spent this on TikTok, we spent this on Facebook, different optimizations. Here's a chart, here's how our data's looking, etc. You posted this on LinkedIn, it's just wonder if anyone's interested. And a lot of people were interested. We went kind of mega viral on LinkedIn, had about 1.5 million impressions, had a ton of people asking for the tool. Our calendars got packed. So basically what started as this thing to help ourselves, we started selling externally. And so I'm gonna wrap here, but the TLDR was, what did we learn? Well, we learned we jumped right headfirst into competition. We didn't know anything about ads. We didn't know anything about ad agencies. And we definitely didn't know anything about ad tech at all, right? But the idea was, yes, you should be abreast to the most recent technology. Yes, you should be abreast to all these things happening. But if there's no product use case, you're going to get distracted by the ability to create infinite amounts of software. And so instead, in the agentic future, basically, products are no longer point solutions. The market is going to demand a fully integrated solution. And so if you're, aspiring founders, whatever, obviously we have a long way to go, and by no means are we successful conventionally, but my advice or kind of the takeaway is there's a way in which you can dive into competition, understand what's broken because you're young and because there's a cottage industry of weird incentives and all these things that revolve around an individual, and you can build good products by just understanding the market and then thinking about how to innovate out instead of starting with the technology and finding a product, right? So I'm gonna wrap there. That's all I have. Hope you enjoyed, and yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming out, Andrew. He flew in from New York to be